The golden chandeliers sparkled over the marble floors of Aunt Darlene's Houston estate, casting fractured light like silent, sharp-eyed judges. I'm Juliana Wynn, 34 years old, blending into the background at the Chandler family's annual winter gala, just another quiet shadow amid a sea of tailored suits and shimmering gowns. The room was thick with polished smiles and rehearsed pleasantries, the kind that felt like performances rather than genuine connection. I lingered by the punch fountain, wearing a forest green satin dress that was elegant without shouting, holding a glass of sparkling cider untouched for nearly 10 minutes. The air smelled like money, citrus perfume, rich leather, and fresh roses shipped in especially for tonight. Juliana. Aunt Darlene's voice cut through the murmurs like a sharp note in a symphony. Still stuck as a secretary at that tech place? What's it called? Crestline Dynamics, I said evenly. Executive assistant to the CEO. Her pearl earrings swung as she chuckled. Darling, you're far too clever to be making coffee runs. You should be running the show by now. I smiled politely but said nothing about being the interim CEO, a secret only a handful knew. Nor did I mention the $200 million acquisition deal I'd just closed yesterday, one that would shift Crestline's future forever. I wasn't here to impress, I was here to observe. Jules, Reed, my cousin, swaggered over, bourbon in one hand, the other tucked into his tux pocket. He was Chandler Holdings' new vice president of outreach, a fancy title for a man who golfed more than he worked. Heard Crestline's hiring, he said with a smirk, nudging me. I can put in a good word. They're looking for legal admins. I took a measured sip. Thanks, Reed. I'm good where I am. Happy's for quitters, he said with a grin. Maybe he was right. I had stopped chasing their approval a long time ago. Their idea of success never included me. I glanced across the ballroom at the family portraits, Chandlers in power suits, cutting ribbons, gracing magazine covers. My legacy was coming soon, but not in the way they imagined. 12 years ago, at 22, I'd sat in Uncle David's walnut-paneled study with a flash drive full of business plans and a burning ambition. Fresh from Stanford, I pitched a consultancy aimed at helping minority-owned startups grow with AI-driven market analysis. Uncle David leaned back, unimpressed. Consulting's risky. Aunt Darlene laughed. Sweetheart, you'd make a wonderful executive assistant. That's organized work. I smiled through their dismissals, nodded at their maybe next year. That night, barefoot on my tiny East Austin balcony, I whispered a promise to the dry Texas air. I'll build something so big, they'll pretend they always believed in me. And now here I stood, secretly CEO of Crestline, the ink barely dry on a $200 million deal with a global logistics firm. The PR team was already drafting my Forbes profile. Let Aunt Darlene and Reed keep their smirks, soon the invitations would bear my name. I didn't do this for applause, I did it to prove, even if only to myself, that I was more than their doubts. I named my company Alara Strategies, height in Spanish, because I was reaching higher than anyone thought possible. It started in a cramped office above an auto body shop in East Austin, where the walls were thin, the air conditioning rattled, and the internet barely held during video calls. But I had grit, a laptop, and a dream no one in my family had ever seen. They thought they'd buried me under their skepticism. Instead, they handed me the shovel to carve my own path. Alara was more than a company, it was a quiet revolution. My first client was a failing coffee roaster, drowning in debt. I spent hours unraveling their finances, renegotiating contracts, rebuilding their wholesale model. Their revenue jumped 22% in one quarter. Austin's startup community took notice. By 25, I felt the first real spark of success, but kept my name out of the spotlight. Partners took the public credit while I masterminded everything in the background: legal frameworks, growth strategies, investor presentations. My invisibility was intentional. Alara grew, Denver, Nashville, Phoenix, each new office a quiet win, every contract a reminder. I was no longer the girl dismissed in Uncle David's study. To the Chandlers, I was still just Juliana, the assistant, the disappointment, the invisible one. But that didn't matter, not when I was helping real people, like the family-run Riverbend Act in Missouri, a company facing a hostile takeover. When I saw Chandler Holdings, led by Uncle David, targeting them, I knew this was no longer just business. It was personal. While Chandler Holdings stripped companies for parts, Alara helped them breathe. I built a secret research team to track Chandler's acquisitions, a shipyard in Galveston, a spice company in Tucson, a solar firm in Nevada. We reached out before the deals closed. Let us review your books first, we said. There might be a better way. Many said yes. And those who did, we performed miracles, 90-day recovery plans, cash flow triage, strategic pivots. Most never sold. They survived, thrived. Each company Alara saved from Chandler Holdings felt like a small victory in a long, quiet war. Yet I never said a word, never to clients, never to my team, to them. I was simply Jules, the operations lead who never missed a deadline. But in the stillness after late-night strategy sessions or long days in the field, I'd wander the Austin headquarters, glass walls humming with the energy of impact, and catch my reflection in the windows. Not a secretary, not a shadow. A woman who had changed the game without making a sound. When Riverbend Act faced a direct takeover threat, I knew it was time to step into the light. Their land, legacy, and 50 employees were about to be swallowed by a Chandler shell company. I couldn't stand by. Our team crafted a counteroffer, fast, airtight. We'd invest in Riverbend, not consume them, preserve their workforce, expand their innovation, and we had the capital to back it. Fresh off a $200 million strategic partnership with a global logistics firm. The morning of the Riverbend meeting, I stood at the head of our top-floor boardroom. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Austin skyline, cranes in motion, sunlight pouring over the city. My indigo suit felt like armor, 10 years of quiet wins stitched into every seam. Kane, my executive assistant, laid out the files with a smile. "They're all downstairs," she said, press included. For the first time in a decade, I wouldn't be behind the scenes. I was Juliana Wynn, founder and CEO of Alara Strategies, not for revenge, but for every voice ignored, including my own. If Juliana's rise and fearless defiance draw you in, follow her journey. Subscribe now to witness how resilience rewrites legacy, one bold move at a time. Her story isn't finished, neither is yours. Step into the light with us. Merger terms, equity splits, acquisition leverage. At exactly 8:45 a.m., the Chandler Holdings team arrived at Frost Towers conference level downtown. Uncle David, Reed, Meredith Chandler. They didn't truly see me. To them, I was still the forgettable niece who fetched coffee at family parties and quietly filled out pointless spreadsheets. I stood, buttoned my blazer, and met their eyes with calm authority. "Good morning," I said evenly. "I'm Juliana Wynn, CEO of Alara Strategies, and I'll be leading today's meeting." Meredith's fountain pen dropped with a sharp clink. Reed's smirk vanished, jaw tightening as he flipped open his notepad, as if it could shield him. Uncle David blinked slowly, as if seeing my name might undo what he'd just heard. "Are you CEO?" he asked. I nodded, letting silence hang before adding, "You never saw me because you never bothered to look." I gestured to Kaylin, who distributed proposal folders sealed with Alara's gold crest. Inside, the full merger offer for Riverbend Act, supported by our already secured 35% stake through private placement. Calmly, I outlined the strategic blocks Alara had enacted recently: Green Ridge Textiles, Solar Vista, EchoScan Medical, all Chandler's targets, all stabilized by our intervention. The room fell silent. My voice steady, every word purposeful. I wasn't here for petty revenge. I was reclaiming dignity for the families stripped bare by ruthless takeovers. David's face betrayed nothing, except a twitch in his temple. Reed muttered about regulatory hurdles. Meredith whispered, "She's been in the room all along." I leaned in. "You can sign the merger agreement and retain partial benefit, or wait. In 10 days, I'll complete the open market acquisition of Riverbend's remaining shares. Alara will hold control, with or without you." David pushed back his chair and stormed out wordlessly. Kaylin looked at me. "Pause the meeting?" I shook my head. "No. Let them feel the shift." 15 minutes passed. The air thickened, quiet, tense, like the calm before a storm. Then the door opened. David returned, jaw set but fire gone from his eyes. He sat. He signed. The pen scraped the paper like a reluctant surrender. I nodded respectfully. gathered my folder, and walked out into the hallway. The Austin skyline shone bright through the glass. The spring breeze rushed through the atrium, sharp, electric. But I didn't feel cold. That afternoon, Alara's valuation soared 17%. Chandler Holdings dropped 8.4%. For the first time, my name scrolled across Bloomberg's evening ticker. Juliana Wynn, the enigma behind Alara's rise. I didn't savor their fall. That moment wasn't for them. It was for every person told to stay silent. For every entrepreneur bullied into signing away their life's work. 3 weeks later, formal notice arrived. Alara's 31% stake in Chandler Holdings gave me the right to nominate a board member. I didn't hesitate. The boardroom was colder than the AC setting, a long walnut table, a dozen chairs, and a dozen pairs of eyes unsure whether to recoil or feign welcome. I entered in an ivory pantsuit, heels clicking with quiet certainty. Their legacy was stitched into the room's walls, but I carried something stronger, earned authority. Silent, but undeniable. Reed was absent, sidelined by legal trouble tied to a botched acquisition scheme finally catching up with him. I stood at the head of the Chandler Holdings boardroom, surrounded by men who once dismissed me as an admin with illusions of grandeur. My voice was steady, my message clear. Chandler Holdings will no longer strip companies to their bones. We will rebuild, with integrity, with purpose. Silence followed, then tentative applause, a few polite claps from junior members, then a ripple of reluctant respect, awkward but real. A week later, Meredith Chandler sent a single-line email. You did the impossible. I want to learn from you. I saved it, unread, but never deleted. Uncle David resigned the next month. His letter, raw, handwritten, almost vulnerable, read. I misjudged you, Juliana. You have shown us a better way. I folded it carefully, placing it beside my first investor contract, reminders of victories won not through spite, but vision. Lenora, caught mocking my little startup in a viral clip, vanished quietly from industry panels. No statements, just silence. At a Houston finance conference, I passed Uncle David in the lobby. He said nothing, only gave a small, acknowledging nod. These were not trophies. They were tremors, signs that a system long ruled by greed and ego was learning, slowly, to listen. Back at Alara headquarters, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking Lady Bird Lake. The lights on the bridge shimmered like stars caught in water. I hadn't built this to tear down my past. I built it to rewrite the future. The media finally found me. I graced front pages and financial segments, but I chose my moments carefully. The spotlight is powerful only if wielded with purpose. At a 2025 gala in Washington, D.C., under an impossibly clear sky, I accepted the Strategic Innovator Award. Scanning the room full of suits, scholars, and changemakers, I smiled and said, 10 years ago, my family laughed when I said I wanted to build a consulting firm. They told me to marry smart, not build bold. Laughter rippled warmly through the crowd. I listened. I continued, just not the way they meant. More laughter, then quiet. Success isn't an award or evaluation. It's a message from a student who says, I didn't think I could until I saw you. The applause rolled in, long, alive, and real. Invitations poured in, business schools, innovation summits, women's leadership forums. I accepted selectively, not to bask in fame, but to share the truth behind the shine. I told stories of late nights buried in spreadsheets, of mornings clouded with doubt, of choosing to stay in the shadows until ready to lead in the light. In every room, I found someone, a young woman, a quiet voice reminding me of myself. That's why I launched the Altitude Fund, venture capital for women-led startups, former assistants, single mothers, night shift nurses turned founders, not just dreamers, but doers. My heart swelled, not for Alara's size, but for the dreams we were igniting. Then one morning, a plain white envelope appeared on my desk, hand-delivered, marked, for Juliana Wynn's eyes only. Inside, a letter from Uncle David. I thought business was power and control. You showed me something else. Humanity. I'm stepping down permanently. I'm sorry. I sat quietly, coffee warm in hand, not triumphant, just reflective. Real change had come, not just in me, but in the system that once confined me. I tucked the letter into Alara's strategic journal, the record of our biggest shifts. Because sometimes justice arrives not with noise, but a signature and a quiet apology. The first Altitude Fund roundtable felt like sunrise. Around me sat women no one had ever bet on before, nurses, teachers, immigrant founders. Their voices clear, confident, bold. I realized we weren't just rebuilding businesses. We were rebuilding belief. I saw my journey in theirs, the sting of being overlooked, the quiet strength to rise. Alara was no longer just a firm. It was a signal fire, calling out to anyone who'd ever been told they weren't enough. And then I understood. My legacy wasn't in headlines or valuations. It lived in the courage I helped awaken. The permission I gave others to dream without fear. 3 months after that boardroom shift, my life was transformed. No more hiding behind titles or behind-the-scenes influence. I was Juliana Wynn, a symbol for those once dismissed. The world finally saw me. But I stayed grounded, choosing purpose over prestige. At a New York summit, I told a crowd of young women, power isn't handed to you, it's built, brick by quiet brick, even when no one's watching. Alara thrived, but the Altitude Fund became my heartbeat. Supporting women ignored for too long, now launching ventures blooming like wildflowers after a storm. I was once the girl mocked for dreaming too big. Now I rise, not to prove them wrong, but to show you that you can rise, too. If Juliana's journey moves you, subscribe and share your voice below. Let's build boldly.